There's something else going on, and it's one of those things where I want to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. And at the same time, you ever have an argument? It could be with a wife, a loved one, a buddy, or whatever it is, a teammate, and you know how the argument's going to go. You're not going to change your opinion. He or she's not going to change their opinion, but you can't help yourself, so you have the argument. When you're done having the argument, you go your separate ways, and it is what it is. No one's changed your opinion on anything that you argued about, right?
Right.
Is that so? We've been in that place before.
I think most people have been there.
We've all seen that before.
Oh yeah.
Now, for some reason, this is a story that goes all the way back to 2011, and it's rearing its head now, and for no reason. But I think it's an important topic to get into.
Okay.
And one that I find very interesting. Now, back in 2011, all right?
Yeah.
On an episode of Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel, all right?
Where my friend Frank DeFord worked.
Yes, he did.
Yes, and I've been on that show. Good show, highly rated show, and a highly, I would say, a show that's won a lot of awards. Yeah, no,
listen, I'd say you want about Bryant Gumbel, that show's been great.
Yeah,
and had a long run on HBO. So back in 2011, on Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel, this is during an NBA lockout, said the lockout could be avoided and could have gone a different direction. But the reason there was a lockout was because the lockout ended in spite of David Stern, not because of him. All right?
Okay.
And then he went on to call David Stern, this is going back to 2011, a plantation overseer. All right? And that was a big deal back then in 2011. I don't know if you remember talking about it, but it was a big deal. That has now come full circle because David Stern, who left the NBA in 2014, still remembers those words and is still offended by it. And it came up again in light of the LeBron James situation.
What situation?
The alleged graffiti on the fence. And based on where things are now in regards to the NBA with David Silver. Now,
Adam Silver.
This is not a new story by a long shot.
Is this a new report or an old report?
This is an old report.
That's coming back to be a new report.
It's coming back to be a new report because David Stern brought it back up again, that he remembered those words and how offended he was by those words because, as he said, I've done more for people of color than Bryant Gumbel's ever done. And it brought, for some reason, I had a guttural reaction to it when I saw it, and I remember the story from 6 years ago, because I'm trying to figure out what the disconnect is between the way I see things and the way a lot of other people see things. White or black, irrelevant to me who the commentator is. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're an NBA basketball player and you're gifted with the ability to play NBA basketball, and for that matter, Major League Baseball, NFL football, NHL hockey, or any professional sport in which you do make more money than the average person your age makes in virtually any field they could be in, right?
Right.
I'm trying to figure out, outside of life's normal problems, kids, marriage, things of that nature, taxes, traffic, right, whatever it might be that bothers all of us. How are you being mistreated?
I don't know.
What's the disconnect where you're angry?
I don't know, man.
And I don't care if you're white, black, Hispanic, or any other nationality.
But in this case, I can understand why David Stern would have. And I remember talking about it. I remember saying, David Stern works for the NBA owners. Roger Goodell works for the NFL owners. Gary Bettman works for the owners of the NHL. Same thing with Rob Manfred and the owners of Major League Baseball. All they are is the mouthpiece for the owners. They're doing what the owners want them to do. And one of the most important aspects of trying to do what the owners want is to control costs.
Right.
Especially long-term costs. You want to have some cost certainty when you're in these businesses, especially when you're playing guys like LeBron James, $35 million a year.
Right.
You want, and I don't know if there is a guy that David Stern who is, and I remember but just discussing this. He basically took Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and said, you guys are the stars. We're promoting you. We want to give you the opportunity to get our fans back in our buildings, supporting our product. Because before they got into the league was really declining.
Big time.
So he was the one, and I remember interviewing him when I had my MSG show, talking about that thought process and how dangerous that was when you think about it in relation to the owners of NBA basketball and what that was going to do to the overriding cost, the biggest cost, and that was going to be player salaries.
Right.
But he said, look, man, I understood what we had to do. We had to promote our players. And in order to promote our players, I had to put them front and center, essentially in front of their jerseys. Without their jerseys on. It was about their personalities.
Right.
And, David Stern's commentary now in this latest interview about he's done more for people of color, I would tell you he's just, at the end of the day, he's done nothing but great things for the NBA players. Adam Silver has picked up that torch and moved forward. And I would say that the NBA commissioner should be lauded for everything that they've done for the players in the NBA.
It's just so stupid, but I don't know. We always go to race for some reason, and I hate bringing it up, but I'm not afraid of the topic, and it should be discussed from time to time. And David Stern's right. Bryant Gumbel is an idiot for what he said back then.
In that regard,
and
yes.
The fact that it's still on his mind all these years later. I always think of this with Howard Cosell. Now, listen, I was young. I never met Howard Cosell. But Howard Cosell, for a lot of kids like me growing up, it was an event if Howard Cosell was doing it. You obviously had met him, and you played with him broadcasting your games. Yeah. And as you've described, a Monday Night Football as a player, Cosell was bigger, larger than life.
That's right.
He was a star. You guys weren't when he did a game, right?
Yes.
And I always remember Howard Cosell, when he got in trouble for the way he described Alvin Garrett from the Washington Redskins, and was labeled a racist for what he said. And Alvin Garrett was running down the field, and Howard Cosell said, look at that little monkey run. And it was the end of the world for Howard Cosell. And despite all the people that came out and said he describes his grandkids the same way, there's not a racist bone in that guy's body, and everyone all of a sudden forgot Howard Cosell's relationship with Muhammad Ali and his support of Muhammad Ali during that time when no one supported Ali, right?
Right.
And he lost his job because of it.
You know what? It's attack.
And I'm trying
and that was actually the beginning of it. I almost say the beginning of it.
That and Jimmy the Greek.
Yep.
Drunk in a Washington restaurant, talked about breeding and this and that nonsense. And it's gotten worse since then. And it brought me back to the LeBron stuff. In his comments after what we thought was a real case of racism and your graffiti being painted across the fence on his driveway, of which is absolutely no proof of ever happening. We don't know if there's any investigation into it. There's no video of it or anything else. And for some reason, reading the David Stern stuff struck a chord with me again where, we have it really good, you and I, sitting here getting paid to talk about sports. And the guys we talk about have it really, really good. You live both lives. You've always had it really, really good in that regard. Doesn't mean you don't earn it. Doesn't mean you ever worked hard for it and everything that comes your way. But we have it really good. So I'm trying to figure out, what's everyone bitching about?
Well,
I honestly don't get it. Like, you want to, as a fan, we're going to bitch today, as we should, about the Yankees losing to the Angels, about Matt Harvey having a dead arm and maybe going on the MRI, about Neil Walker pulling a hamstring, about all the things that are important to us as fans from what takes place on the field of play, right?
That's right.
And that's our passion. Sports is a public trust. We're pissed at the Wilpons. We get pissed at the Rangers or a goaltender for letting up a goal. Or we get pissed at a football team for getting rid of $60 million in salary and not having a quarterback. We get mad at a wide receiver for not being mature enough to be the best he can be. And that's our right. But what are we bitching about on the other side?
Well, it's an easy, go-to place to get your whatever's on your chest to get it off. But I'd always say this, the great thing about sports, especially playing in it, and I was on a team that I would probably say it was 65, maybe 60% African-American players.
Yep.
And I'll never forget Sam Weiss used to say, guys, in this room there's only a couple of colors, and those colors are black and orange. We are the Cincinnati Bengals. We are a family. We are a team. Doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't matter if you come from the deep parts of Oklahoma or Texas or Long Island or Michigan or Washington or California. We're one team. And what will ultimately determine whether or not you make this team is what you do on the field and whether or not it can help our team. I don't have he goes, I don't have a set roster. I kind of think I know who's going to be on this team, but you got to earn it out here in training camp.
Right. No matter where you come from, no matter who you are.
Nothing is given to you in sports. I mean, and I think that most people who play sports, and even those who play, weekend warrior softball or whatever are part of a team, recognize you're out there competing. And, when you're competing at the highest of levels, like the LeBron Jameses of the world, the Tom Brady's of the world, I mean, at the end of the day, you are a part of a family. Black, white, Asian, Tongan, whatever it is, you are a part of a family. And the players don't see race when they're all dressed. When they're in their uniforms, they're out there. I don't think anybody even thinks that way.
Right.
It's only the minutia outside that the players are now being asked to respond to. And ESPN was one of those at the forefront of, being politically active.
Right.
How are the ratings doing?
Right, brutal. I mean, terrible. They're in the toilet. There's not a single show on that network that, people really watch in any earnest or look forward to.
The best part about sports, really honestly, in the locker room, is that you actually get to know people. You get to know who they are, what they are, where they're from, what their background is, what their situations are.
Yep.
And, they become your friends, and they become your friends for life. And it doesn't really matter what color they are.